So, you're interested in playing Striker or want to see how Striker is like? Well, you definitely came to the right place. In this video of the In a Nutshell series, I'm going to cover the Striker really fast. I'm going to show you a few abilities and I'm going to show you and talk about how he plays like and also give you my own opinion. At the end, I will also talk about engravings and how to gear him properly. So, let's just jump right into it. The Striker is a fighter that uses two smaller fist weapons. Here they are glamored to look a bit cooler than they usually would look like, but indeed, he punches and kicks things as you can see. Some of the abilities look pretty flashy. They remind you obviously, especially with this glamour, a lot of a certain fighting character. I do believe the Striker looks really fun and really engaging. Now we talk about how the Striker actually plays like. Basically, you attack the target and you generate, as you can see here at the bottom of the screen, a certain gauge. You want to generate this gauge in order to use your so-called elemental or ultimate skills. Let's have a close look. For example, Tiger Toss, it's an ultimate skill. Basically, ultimate skills do more damage than the other skills and consume these chakras. If I press the Tiger Toss, as you can see, 2 of the chakras got consumed. Every ultimate skill uses a different amount of power or of these gauges. Flaming Uppercut also uses 2. So let's again show you how Flaming Uppercut looks like. Those are basically the 2 element or ultimate skills we want to use. Now obviously the Striker also has to change his playstyle coming endgame. Let's have a look at the 2 engravings that the Striker has access to. Elements Balance, which basically makes it so that when you use an elemental skill, you will always only consume 1 chakra instead of 2 or even 3. But at the same time, you either have reduced damage or you have no damage, additional damage. On the other hand, Special Strike, which is the opposite, will mean that every time you use an element skill, you will consume all of your chakras, but your damage of that skill will be increased by 35% per consumed chakra, which is quite significant. On top of that, Special Strike also gives you access to 4 of the element gauges, so you can increase the damage of your skills by 4 times 35%. That is really good. This is also why Special Strike is currently the go-to class engraving for the Striker. Elements Balance is currently being buffed on Korea, but it's not played a lot due to it being weaker than the Special Strike. Elements Balance basically has a playstyle that includes more of the elemental skills, but in general it just isn't seen a lot, so it's not really worth talking about it. I will focus on Special Strike and show you exactly how it plays like. Special Strike, as mentioned, increases my damage significantly. Now how do you play this? So once we get into an instance, you want to fill up your gauge by using your skills that are not your special skills, right? I'm just gonna now do full restore, and once we have all 4 of the bars filled, we will then use our debuff, use one of the element skills, refill our bar as much as possible again to have access to more skills, and then use the second one again. Now this kinda didn't work out properly. Why did it not? That is because we're using the wrong stats. In order for Striker to also play decently, you need to have the right stats. You need to get as much specialty as possible, because specialty would increase your gauge generation. Now you can see my gauge is filling much faster than before. Obviously now we will be able to execute this. Before I execute this, I will go over the skills really fast. The Heaven Cleaving Kick is just a mobility skill, so is Flying Dragon. Scorpion Tail is a heavy impairment skill and also mostly just used to generate gauge outside of your burst window. Now we come to the interesting skills. Thunder Threat is a skill that applies a buff to your teammates by giving them movement speed and yourself, but it also reduces the resistance to critical damage by 18% on the target. That is if you use the right tripod. Then we have Crescent Kick, which is simply used to generate more gauge, and so is also Halberd Thrust Kick. Your 2 element skills that you want to use are Flaming Uppercut and the Tiger Toss. So now that you know all the skills, I will show you the burst window of the Striker. Once you reach full gauge, we debuff the target, use the first element skill, refill our gauge as fast as possible, and use the second one. And voila, that's your burst window. Outside of your burst window, your goal is just to restore your gauge and wait for your cooldowns to come up again. That's pretty much how you play Striker. Now I will go a bit on about my opinion of Striker. I have to be really honest when I talk about Striker that I think it's a sweaty job. Why would I say it's sweaty? Well, the two skills that I showed you just a few minutes ago are basically back damage skills. Striker also runs an engraving called Backstabbing Master, which we will go into later. But basically, your whole burst window needs to be perfectly executed from the back within a 6-second window, which is a really short amount of time. And sure, that sounds really fun and it also hits decent numbers, but I honestly have come to really dislike this class. At first it was really fresh and new, but having to force myself to always be in the proper position 46 seconds and then also execute that window is actually very hard. This is because of the RNGs, the monsters that will just turn around, knock you away, disappear and whatnot, you name it. So Striker really honestly feels very hard to play properly, and so I find myself just not really pushing as much damage with it as I would want to. I'm not sure if that's the character itself or me just being bad at this point, honestly. But I think Striker is hard to play. It does offer not much utility besides the critical resistance debuff and the movement speed, which lasts only 5 seconds by the way. And on top of that, it does though have at least a counter ability, and that's about it. So in my opinion, personally, I will not even make a Striker anymore on the final version. When I talk about the final version, obviously I talk about the NA/EU beta. The Striker for me is a dead class. I just don't enjoy it anymore, and I don't even know what to do with this character. I know that's pretty sad, but I'm sure some people out there love this class, because obviously it is very focused on punching and kicking things, and it also looks very flashy. I have to admit, it looks very cool to play, the ultimate looks cool, and it just overall is pretty fun to play outside of, well, playing it properly. In my opinion, that is. So I'm sorry if someone didn't like my opinion on this class, but that's just how I personally feel about it. And lastly, I want to give you a few advices on how to play Striker properly now for the upcoming beta, or if you play on Russia, that is. First off, we're going to go over the character info. For character info, basically for stats, you want to focus on specialty as much as possible, yet you don't want to give up critical damage. So basically you want to have a ratio of 30 to 70% of critical to specialty. For engravings, which are obviously the most important in every single class, you want to run Special Strike as priority, followed by Grudge as a super priority as always. On top of that, you want to look at Curse Stall, which is obviously good for every class because it increases your damage by 16%. And on top of that, you want to run Backstabbing Master because your whole burst comes from the back. Lastly, to make this whole burst window easier, you want to check out Spirit Absorption because it increases your attack and movement speed by 15%. That also includes casting times. So these are the engravings and the characteristics you want to run for your Striker. Now, again, I'm going to go shortly over the skills that you want to run. Having Cleaving Kick with the following tripods is what I personally run. Having Cleaving Kick is really just a movement gauge generation tool. It doesn't really serve any other purpose. The damage also isn't really that high. Then we have the Flying Dragon, which is pretty much the same. Again, it is a triple ability skill. As you can see though, it offers really decent utility, like to get away from stuff. Like in general, this skill is very good to dodge or avoid things. But of course, we also want to use it to generate gauge. Then we have the Scorpion Tail, which is your impairment skill, and on top of that, just damage. The damage is okay, it's not too high, but it is decent from considering outside of your burst window. This skill has not really any other use. Now again, we come to Thunder Thread, which is your bread and butter and your only utility that you have for your party. Make sure to also use the petrol tripod, because otherwise you don't even give anyone any movement speed. This is also used to basically help yourself execute your burst window. On top of that, the petrol also gives you attack speed. So once we use this, we can see here attack speed increased by 8%. Now we go over the two Crescent Kick and Halberd Thrust Kick, which are both used to just generate gauge. Their damage is okay, it's better than the Scorpion Tail's damage, but they are mostly used to generate gauge inside of your burst window. We have Flaming Uppercut, which is a double hit that does really good damage obviously and has decent impairment and also offers super armor, which is stagger immunity. It also, in my opinion, actually looks really cool because there is a tiger head coming out at the top. And lastly, your highest hitting skill is a Tiger Toss. Your Tiger Toss has impairment 2, has some destruction, and does really good damage. You can even charge it from really far away actually and still hit the target. But make sure you hit the target from the back, because the damage from the back is increased significantly, especially with the Backstabbing Master engraving. And basically that's it. That's how you play the Striker. Obviously I haven't shown you the ultimate, but there are two choices, and this one is for straight up, if you can hit them all, they are just more damage than the other one. So again, that's Striker for you. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys like Striker, unlike me. I'm sorry about that, but I just don't like it. And that will be it for today. See you guys in another In a Nutshell video. Have a good one.